Story 1, fourth generation nuclear plants. Just like that, climate change and global warming solved. Since electricity is a major input for most things, the inflation issue is solved. Widespread use of desalination, since we would have low-cost electricity. Every city on Earth could have clean water delivered. Plastic recycling using vaporization would fix the issue with plastic waste polluting our planet. With clean water and power, we could grow food in many places where growing food would not be profitable now. Right now, pollution is an issue worldwide, which affects the health of everyone on Earth. Switching from internal combustion engine vehicles to electric vehicles would result in improved health for all of humanity. Story 2. I would change the United States government subsidy from soy and corn that is solely used for animal feed and industry and transfer that subsidy, as well as promotional programs so that government money subsidized and advertised fruits and vegetables. But not like French fries vegetables, steamed, baked, grilled, or even raw vegetables. Money makes things happen in our culture, and if our government made a determined effort to make fruits and vegetables cool, affordable, and desirable, it would have an enormous impact. Like how that one country paid dairy farms to convert to berry farms. Story 3, higher education classes. This would actually enable people to gain knowledge and training to be productive members of society and raise the overall standard of living and economic output of our entire society. Story 4, a house. No one can have multiple, but every family gets one. Every adult who is single too. No compulsion to be partnered. You get as many bedrooms as there are people involved. Anyone who already owns outright the house they have gets no benefit, but anyone with only one home with a mortgage gets it wiped. Anyone with multiple houses gets nothing unless they sell any excess houses for $1. Then they get their remaining house mortgage canceled too. Story 5, healthcare and medical bills. Just kidding, that's too obvious. I'm going with printer ink. How is it possible that I can buy a whole new printer for $50, but replacing the ink costs more than my car payment? I'm pretty sure printer companies are just drug dealers who found a legal loophole. The first printer's cheap, but then you're hooked for life. Plus imagine how mad Hewlett-Packard and Canon would be. Their whole business model of selling printers at a loss and making it up in ink would collapse overnight. They'd have to actually innovate instead of just making printers that refuse to print in black and white when the yellow cartridge is low. Why is that even a thing? Story 6. In 4th grade, I wrote an essay on how everything should cost $1, and that would solve homelessness and hunger. So I guess my answer is everything. 10-year-old me really didn't understand economics. 30-year-old me only marginally so. Story 7, housing. None of this landlord nonsense where they artificially inflate the price of housing by buying up houses they don't intend to live in, renting those same houses out to people at an inflated price who can't afford to buy an artificially scarce house and exploiting the whole thing to pay off the mortgage in the laziest way imaginable. It's predatory, and not being homeless should be a universal human right. Story 8. I thought this was going to be a lame question because I thought the answer was fairly obvious. But seeing as there are a lot of unhelpful answers here and not a lot of consensus, I thought I would weigh in. Someone said medication, but it's not medication because not everyone needs it all the time. There has to be something almost everyone needs daily. Obvious answer? A gallon of gasoline. A fixed cost for gasoline would revolutionize the world. Assuming it's still a finite resource, that changes things a bit, so someone else said transportation. And really, I like that answer. Wherever you're going, no matter what you're hauling or where, what's the cost? $1. Transportation is the answer. Not every vehicle needs gasoline, but everybody has places to go. Story 9. Taxes, assuming the output remains the same, would generally lower the price of everything in the world and make every country able to get a decent healthcare system. Story 10. Assuming it wouldn't hurt the farmers or any individuals in food production, I'd choose healthy, unprocessed food. Food is an absolute basic necessity and should be cheap. If healthy food is incredibly cheap, the world would be healthier, and every family would never worry about where their next meal is coming from. Story 11. Price would be a bad idea. I assume you mean costs. Otherwise, supply and demand would become an issue. Then your question becomes, if we could remove scarcity, what would we choose? Anything that creates pollution either in production, consumption, or waste should be removed from the list, as this non-monetary cost would not necessarily be sufficiently taken into account in the purchase decision. Similar for service provision, as it implies human lives to be valued at very low amounts. Wage is a compensation for your time, and the total time on Earth defines your life and time as a finite resource that needs to be priced. So which goods create no waste and have a price higher than $1? Freedom of thought or freedom of speech comes to mind. The freedom to live my life as I want, as long as I don't harm someone. The freedom to choose my partner, assuming he or she loves me. Freedom from oppression. Freedom to choose a job or start a business. Freedom to walk around naked in my own home. Basically, things that only require someone else to do nothing, as long as I do nothing upon them. The world would be a more beautiful place if freedom would cost only $1. Story 12. It's comical the number of people saying houses. The shortage will be so massive, and since houses will only be worth $1, people aren't going to build them anymore because they get no money out of it. Congratulations. Now even more people are homeless. For me, I would say subways, trains, and metros. Story 13. Super high-end animal semen. Champion racehorses, beef bulls, etc. Not because I want greater quantities of high-quality animals, but because I want to give a small kick to the balls of a few very rich people. Story 14. Illegal drugs. I'm thinking, will this cause the illegal drug trade to just vanish overnight since it's not profitable anymore? I guess that would solve the drug problems, no? Story 15. Healthcare. Vision, dental, mental. Everything. I am an insurance technician for a large insurance company in the United States. The vast majority of its claims are processed automatically, but there are still so many overall that the ones that raise flags result in a solid inventory of items to manually work through. I am a tiny cog in a giant machine meant solely to take advantage of the sick and injured. I am literally a nameless henchman working for the bad guy. Unfortunately, the bad guy has very good benefits. This means that I get to see the insane costs of everything these days. Ground ambulance mileage is in the thousands, and air ambulance easily reaches $40,000 or more. A complicated childbirth can be $100,000. Joint replacement devices and the surgeries are also thousands. Many things get denied if you are in-network but did not get the right prior authorization. Emergency situations get denied if the diagnosis isn't considered enough of an emergency. Our coverage of dental and vision is extremely limited. Vision and dental are entirely separate insurances. Cancer treatments are mind-bogglingly expensive, no matter what kind of cancer it is, except for an easily removed melanoma, but that's still hundreds. I am almost positive it's so complicated on purpose just to exhaust the layperson and prevent them from seeking reimbursement, forcing them to pay out of pocket for things that we actually would have covered. The best part of this is that it's all entirely arbitrary. It's all completely made up. In some lower stakes situations, for example, hundreds of dollars instead of thousands, when our system doesn't have built-in pricing for an unspecified code and we cannot find a comparable procedure with which to get a price instead, we literally just have to let it through at a fixed percentage of the original charge, which is a microcosm of how ridiculous it all is. The price itself doesn't matter. What matters is that we don't pay all of it. At least the patient isn't responsible for the excess in most of those situations because it's the doctor's mistake, but it's still so ridiculous to me. Who cares what that treatment actually costs in time or manufacturing? Let them charge whatever and then give them the middle finger. Whatever. If I lost my job because the entire health insurance industry dissolved, I would be celebrating. Especially because my health insurance would no longer be tied to employment. I am almost positive this is why many chief executive officers and other wealthy individuals are against single-payer healthcare. If you cannot quit your job because you need the insurance, companies don't have to worry about treating you well to keep you. They know you'll stay anyway, so they can treat you poorly and pay you inadequately. If you could just quit without needing to worry about healthcare costs, they would actually have to put effort into being a desirable place to work. The same reasoning applies to rent and food prices, by the way. Story 16. Houses. How messed up would that be if these land barons lost their assets overnight, and suddenly the housing crisis is non-existent because literally everyone can afford to buy a house? Story 17. The main challenge I see in something like this is that changing the price of an item to $1 wouldn't affect the supply of that item. Thus, changing the price of a really important item to $1 could lead to a few people buying up the entire supply to hoard it for themselves, leaving nobody else able to acquire it because the supply no longer existed. Story 18, the minimum wage. What I would do instead is supply a work subsidy or negative income tax in cash. Suddenly, when you call customer support, you can talk to a human right away. The friction to get someone into a job where they can start to gain skills and experience to leverage into more opportunities and income. We're progressively making it more and more expensive to give people jobs, which is driving more and more money into creating automation that does those jobs really badly. And thanks to the large language model bubble, it's going to start getting a lot worse. So, I want to take our thumb off the scale against human labor and put it on the scale of carbon emissions. Story 19. The sad thing is that it doesn't matter what people say, even if their answer were to come true. Top comment at this moment is prescription medication. If that were to happen, all that would occur is companies charging more for visiting the doctor, or they would limit the amount people were able to obtain at one time, or they would change it to individual tablets instead of by the box or packet. If it was food, then suddenly you would have to pay to even enter the supermarket. Or you would suddenly find that parking went up to $1,000 every half hour. No matter what people chose, even if it came true, all that would change is the people with all the money and power would be introducing a new step that needs to be completed and costs a fortune before you can access your now $1 item.